The missions were us setting out how we would approach government. They're about working cross-department. They're about long-term planning. Things that, frankly, with so many changes of Prime Minister, so many housing ministers, so many children's ministers, there just hasn't been the focus on what people expect a government to do, which is to get on with the job.
Hello and welcome to the We Are Labour podcast. I am Dan Greef, your host, and this is the show that highlights our amazing Labour candidates and the constituencies we need to win to form the next Labour government. As you hear the stories and experiences from our candidates, I want you to think, how can you help? What can you do to make the difference? Can you go and leaflet, knock on doors, donate money, or phone canvass voters? By giving a little of your time and or money, it will make a massive difference. This election will be won by Labour members doing our bit to help get the Labour message of hope out to our communities. Let's crack on with the show. Hi everyone, it's Dan Greef here from We Are Labour. I've just recorded a fantastic episode with Jess Asato. You're going to really love this. I'm recording this from home, so if you're watching the YouTube version, this is my kind of home environment. I bought a red light just to make it a bit more Labour-esque, but apart from that, it's a dining table. The glamour of making a podcast. Today's episode is superb. So Jess Asato is standing in Lowestoft. It's a new CLP, a new constituency, based on Waveney. So if you are in the Norfolk, Suffolk, even Cambridgeshire area, and you're not going to our battleground seats of Peterborough or Stevenage nearby, but you're going out maybe to the coast for the day, then she is a fantastic candidate to support. And you'll find out more about some of the issues in her area. And I just want to reflect on this one and say, one of the things that probably struck me the most in this podcast is how Jess gave me that hope of what a Labour government can achieve if it wins the next election. But we can only have that hope with the agency that you have now to make a difference. So if you want to get that Labour government, you have to go and support candidates like Jess in our battleground seats. Anyway, I will now hand over to this marvellous interview with Jess Asato for Lowestoft. Well, it gives me great privilege to welcome Jess Asato to the show. Hello, Jess. Welcome for your seat of Lowestoft, just standing this time whenever the general election might be.
Good evening, Dan.
Great to have you here. How long have you been selected now? So we're now recording this in March 2024. Just get my dates right there. Ex-history teacher, great with dates. How long have you been selected for?
Just over a year, actually. So I had my anniversary at the end of February. I mean, it's gone so incredibly quickly, but also it's just been the most fantastic experience.
Yeah, great. So how familiar are you with that area? Because you've got history in Lowestoft, is that right?
Well, I grew up just about 20 minutes away in Galston, which is also on the coast, really obviously near Great Yarmouth. And then I moved inland to Rollesby in Norfolk, which is also kind of Broads village. So it's very, very similar to Lowestoft. And while Galston had beautiful sandy beaches, just like Lowestoft, we'd often take trips to Lowestoft to also enjoy the beaches there when I was a kid. So, it feels very, very similar, that sense of, industry, which has, seen better days, to be absolutely honest. There used to be a lot of, big industry, big fishing fleet in Lowestoft. There's a lot of pride in Lowestoft's history as, a fishing port. And sadly, it's really hit some difficult times. So there are beautiful Victorian seaside buildings. Samuel Peto designed a lot of the waterfront there. But as often happens in coastal towns, we're at the end of the line. That means we're often forgotten. And it also means that, you get quite a lot of people who have social issues who end up sadly, unable to get the support that they need. And so we do have a number of social pressures, which were very familiar to me when I was growing up in Great Yarmouth, where there was huge unemployment and deprivation.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a slight anecdote about Lowestoft. So I used to teach at Notre Dame High School in Norwich. I don't know if you know Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And my first day in the job, I was very, very keen. And the head teacher said to me, "We've got an issue with the Lowestoft train. So students will be coming from Lowestoft to the school, and there'd been a report by the public of a complaint on the train itself." So my first day at school, I thought I want to make a good impression. So I volunteered to get on that train and go to Lowestoft and back to see what was going on for the school. I mean, how keen was I? But anyway, so I taught that day at the school, got on with like my first day, meeting my form, etc. And then and they said, the school was really happy. They said the kids won't know who you are, so you'll be incognito to them. Anyway, I get to the platform and all the kids get on, and as soon as I get onto the train, one of the kids, who's one of the louder ones, said, "Oh, he was at our school today. He's a teacher, everyone." It was horrific.
Oh, cover blown.
Yeah, the cover was blown. I was all the way to Lowestoft thinking, "Oh, this is awful." As everyone's like, not only did I have the kids who were aware who I was an agent for their enemy, the teacher's side, but also all the adults on the train were staring at me like, "What are you going to do about this?" And I was a new teacher, so I was like, "I don't
Did they
have a clue."
misbehave?
I'm not going to say yes or no because they might be voting for you later this year. So
I'm sure not. I'm sure not.
they were
But yeah,
angels.
I get the train regularly to Norwich to visit my mother-in-law from Lowestoft, and also to go and do the BBC at the Forum in Norwich. And I'll be honest, I've never seen any kids behaving badly on that train.
Well, obviously,
Greater
I had a
Anglia
big
has done a
impact.
pretty good job with our new trains on
you
that
go.
route. But what I would like to see is a direct train from Lowestoft to London, because there used to be one. Now you have to change at either Ipswich or Norwich to get to Lowestoft. And it really does cut us off because, in that kind of psychological way, if you're thinking about locating your business somewhere, or even if you just want to go for a weekend away at the seaside, if you've got to do that change, there's a sort of barrier there, isn't there, that just makes you think again. So it's one of the things I'd love to explore. And I've got, a number of people who've brought that up with me on the doorstep.
I totally agree with you. When you say cut off, that is the literal meaning in that regard, where a lot of those parts of East Anglia are really distant, aren't they? And as we know, the road networks aren't great anyway. So
Not
if you
at
had
all.
trains, it would make a massive difference.
Yeah.
So in that case, then, so you have got a connection, you said, to this area already. Can you tell me about the constituency? Is this a new constituency that's being formed for the next election?
Sort of. It's pretty much the old boundaries of Waveney, a seat that was created, I think, in 1983. So Lowestoft used to be the old name of the constituency. So we're sort of going back to our roots, really. Then it changed to Waveney. And the boundary changes have removed one ward, Bungay, which is really sad because it's a very, very beautiful little town.
Yeah.
But that sort of cut off, but the rest of the boundaries remain exactly the same. So for most people, it won't feel like they've gone into a completely new constituency. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of that with the boundary changes, places cut up into halves or thirds. So it feels relatively similar. But the major town, Lowestoft, is now the name of the whole constituency.
Okay.
I would say it has caused a bit of confusion because lots of people are saying, well, why are you only representing Lowestoft? Why not Beccles, which is also another fabulous, beautiful town, and of course a number of villages. Somerleyton, which has the beautiful Somerleyton Hall, a gorgeous, gorgeous village. Also places like Lound and Mutford and Blunderston. They are all still in the constituency, which is fabulous. But often, when you get that name change, people are just like, how did this happen? Because actually, there is no communication about it except from ourselves as the candidate standing. Yeah. I do think maybe the Boundary Commission in future years should think about that. I think there should be an actual communication back to the public so that they actually know where they sit, who they're going to vote for in terms of the constituency name.
Completely agree. And in that area, I just want to make this clear. So the battleground target seats that we're going for here is Great Yarmouth, Lowestoft, and Norwich North. That's probably the nearest to
And
that path.
Ipswich.
And Ipswich, sorry. As a Norwich boy, I just want to make it clear I'm not trying to leave out Ipswich.
Oh, better not.
Sorry for about that. Ipswich.
You'll have hell to
Mr.
pay
Abbott.
from our
Yeah.
fabulous candidate, Jack Abbott,
Yeah,
in
sorry, Mr.
Ipswich.
Abbott, about that. Apologies.
Who, of course, is my Suffolk buddy. Right, so,
Oh, of course, brilliant. So, if you're in the East Anglian area, certainly, of course, unless you're like near towards Peterborough and Stevenage, but if you're in sort of Norfolk, Suffolk, they're the seats to go for. So, what are the sort of issues that are coming up locally on the doorstep? I mean, is it more kind of the local issues that are coming up, the national? What sort of stories are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so many issues, but the ones most recently tend to be around access to dentistry. I mean, Suffolk is a well-known dentistry desert, but Lowestoft in particular. I mean, there isn't a single dentist who is taking any new patients at the moment.
Wow.
It's extraordinary. I have never ever met so many people on the doorstep who have had to go to A&E because they have, chronic pain that there's nothing they can do about. I've met two people who have pulled their own teeth out.
Oh.
Okay, one of which did it with the old string on the door trick. I mean, I thought that was something that
That's
happened
19th century, isn't it?
donkeys years ago,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is
Dickensian. That's
appalling.
Dickensian right there, isn't it?
Nobody should be faced with this, and of course, it's just so problematic in terms of thinking about where in the end does our investment go, because you don't want a whole load of people rocking up to A&E with dental pain because they've got abscesses and things, which should have been fixed much earlier on. Those costs are then piling up on the NHS elsewhere. So it's a total false economy, as much as the fact that people just shouldn't have to go through something like this. Dental decay amongst our children, it's also appalling. And that has lifelong effects. People, won't have good dental health for the rest of their adult life. So it is a real issue, and clearly something that I'm really pleased that we're addressing at the national level. Another really big issue, particularly in our villages, is around the terrible public transport, particularly buses.
Right.
There just aren't any buses, right? So if you are older and you don't have access to a car, you say that you just can't drive anymore, you can't afford to drive anymore, or your husband's passed away and you've just not got access to a car. Fundamentally, that you are trapped, you are isolated in a small village, unable to get into Lowestoft or Beccles. And it really does lead to, serious mental health issues for our older people, and just a sense that, they're not part of our community because they can't access all the fabulous things that are going on in Lowestoft. So for me, making sure that we really, really do invest in our local community transport, both between our villages and our major towns, but also buses don't run after 6:30 in Lowestoft.
Right.
That means we have a nighttime economy that is completely dependent on people driving. I mean, that's just nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, crazy. And also, I mean, buses are like the fundamental starting point of any transport system. I mean, I can sometimes when I talk to people based in bigger cities, they kind of they think about light rail and stuff, and I'm like, well, that's all very well, but actually, rural areas where I'm from as well, without a bus network, there's nothing. That's it. And it's not good enough to have one bus in the morning, one in the evening, and that's it for the day, or nothing at all, because this is then a massive burden on mental health, especially post-pandemic. I think people feel sometimes more isolated now than they did even a few years ago.
Absolutely. And it's, about, what about our shift workers? How do they manage that without a car? What about young people who just want to get out to see their friends? There's relatively good bus transport between Lowestoft and Norwich, and certainly Beccles and Norwich. But actually, crossways, so thinking about kind of going sort of Great Yarmouth through Lowestoft and then through to Southwold, it's good during the day, but not necessarily in the evening. And one of the great things about Lowestoft is that we are going through a cultural renaissance. So we have something fantastic called the First Light Festival. Okay. It happens on the summer solstice. So Lowestoft is the furthest point east in the UK. And so we see the sun first on that solstice, and it makes a huge celebration of that time on the weekend. There are some fantastic bands, there's a lot of classical music, but there's also a lot of things for families to do on the beach, really exciting. That alongside our fantastic theatres as well, make us a potential destination zone, and we can see that increasing. But if we can't fix the public transport,
Yeah.
then if you're coming as a tourist or if you're local and you want to access all of these fantastic things, it just makes it so difficult. And I understand why people will just, stay at home and watch Netflix, and they don't need to. We've got some fantastic stuff on our doorstep.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So, what about the national picture? Because I kind of find it's interesting. You know, the general public, of course, none of us know when the election's going to be. However, you just get a sense at the moment that people are much more aware that there's going to be a period where you can have a decision coming up, and they're becoming more aware about the national picture. Is there any sort of national stuff apart from dentistry and the transport issues that are coming up in your area at the moment?
Well, I mean, I think most people recognise that things are not right in government. I meet very few people, even including those who are still supporting the Conservatives, and there aren't many. But most people are just absolutely done with the whole sort of psychodrama, really. They want a general election now. Um, I don't think the budget particularly impressed anybody.
Yeah.
Most people were sort of saying we think this is, what it was, which is, a few sweets to the masses, and they're just like, we can see through it because, you know, it's not bad, but it doesn't actually increase the money in our pocket particularly. So, I think the biggest issue really in the end is what we see through all the polls, which is cost of living. People are just feeling, really badly off after 14 years of a Conservative government. Whether that is energy bills, whether that is inflation on their food bills, they simply do not see how they have actually managed to get themselves and their families into a better place. And that surely is the contract that we make with each generation, which is each generation should be better off than the last one. And that contract's been broken by this government. And I think that that has really sunk deep with many voters.
Whoa, Jess, that was brilliant. I love that idea. Yes, you're totally right. At the moment, they did it on Question Time the other day. They asked the audience there who feels like they're now better off than they were. I think they even just said last election, so 2019, but you can easily go back to 2010. Nobody put their hands up. And I think there was almost like with our parents' generation, there was this, I think, acceptance, but also presumption that things would just be getting better. I think we had an idea of progress was just an eternal thing that just happened and happened and happened. And actually, the years of austerity just completely sort of robbed of that from a whole generation of people to the point now where people's lives have not changed. I mean, a young person's been basically, their wages being held back, their opportunities being held back. Now they've even had the ability to travel and do things abroad taken away from them in a way that we didn't have before. And I just find it shocking that, a few tax cuts they think would be enough to win people over. I think people are just aware of it now, aren't they? They're cynical
Well, I
and
think
fed up.
they're sort of treating people like idiots, to be absolutely honest, and that is the worst thing you can do with the electorate. Um, you know, Other issues, of course, are the NHS. So I mentioned dentistry, but access to GPs, huge long waits. I met a wonderful woman called Rachel, who was waiting for 18 months for a hip operation.
18 months of agony, I'd
She
imagine.
Yeah, absolute agony.
Yeah.
And she continued to work through that period, but facing huge difficulties and pain, barely get round her house. And the operation just kept being put off and put off and put off. And that takes a mental toll as well, although, to be honest, she's incredibly resilient. But that sort of story is absolutely everywhere. And children's mental health and special educational needs are two other areas which really come up on the doorstep, and in a really desperate way. It's one of the things about being a candidate is that I love speaking to people and hearing about how they think about the issues in their area or national issues, but where you're a candidate, you don't have those magic letters after your name, MP. You can obviously write to, your local services. You can try and sort things out where you can, where you have counsellors. You can try to make sure that, people do have access to support. But fundamentally, there isn't huge amounts you can do. And when you see people in such great distress and children not being able to access mental health services, even when they're at crisis, or children who clearly have, neurodiversity or disabilities that have gone undiagnosed because parents have just been fighting and fighting the system, trying to get through, taking our local authorities to tribunal, just to find eventually that, yes, they were right. It is frankly the thing that makes me absolutely committed to trying to win Lowestoft for Labour, because if we win Lowestoft, we will be forming a government with a strong majority and the ability to truly drive through change. And goodness, don't we need it?
Yeah, wow. Well, and that then, let's go with that, because let's imagine then that Labour does win the next election, whenever it is. That's what we're fighting for, that's what we're hoping for. What sort of impact would the missions have on Lowestoft?
Well, I mean, I think obviously we're going to wait until we have the manifesto. So, the missions were us setting out how we would approach government. And what I really like about the missions is that they are very much about a different approach to government. They're about working cross department. They're about long-term planning. Things that, frankly, with so many changes of prime minister, so many housing ministers, so many children's ministers, there just hasn't been the focus on what people expect a government to do, which is to get on with the job and make change across a period of time. I think, I mentioned obviously the NHS. The NHS mission, I think, is absolutely key, but also the opportunity mission. And I got involved in politics, not because I came from a political family, but because one day in 1997, just before I was 16, a leaflet got put through my door, a Labour leaflet, and on it had Tony Blair's quote, education, education, education. And at that point in time, I was at Flegg High, a lovely community village school. Teachers worked incredibly hard. They were excellent in many, many ways. But I'll be honest, the school was tired. There just wasn't the sort of resources that, would have given the very best in education. And I really connected with that as a almost 16-year-old. I was really taken by the fact that, here was a new government that wasn't the tired old grey men in suits with, do you remember the Back to Basics campaign at the same time as people were having dalliances with their secretaries? I just, honestly,
Yeah,
I
I do,
read all of
yeah.
this stuff in the papers and I just thought, oh my goodness, the hypocrisy of John Major's Tories. It sickened me as a young person. And that message of education just really captured my excitement and interest. And I joined the Labour Party very, very soon after that victory in May. I think that the opportunity mission is the thing that really speaks to where Labour could go in government. And there are things that I particularly think are quite exciting. Things like breakfast clubs. They really, really help to change a whole number of issues. Obviously, that ability for parents to be able to work, get the hours at work that would really mean a meaningful job. That obviously will help to grow the economy, as well as help to reduce inequality for women.
Just going to say that you know what, it frustrated me when and I'm sure you experienced the same thing with having young children. Often it was the women whose careers get completely hijacked and thrown to one side or paused, and that has a detrimental effect for the remainder of their career.
Absolutely, and it's often responsible for the gender pay gap, but also can be a huge knock to confidence as well, and the time that you spend rebuilding that and finding your feet. can mean that you get set back in a way that, your brain hasn't changed. You're still good at what you do.
Yeah.
But the other aspect of breakfast clubs are about making sure that our very poorest children, who may not get breakfast at all, do have that important start to the day. And we know that that is hugely crucial for attainment in school, because if you are too hungry, you cannot learn. That's just a fundamental. So I think that's quite exciting about the opportunity mission. But the other bit is something that Keir has talked about, Keir Starmer, which is making sure that state schools provide all of the opportunities that you might expect to pay for at private school, particularly things that increase those extracurricular skills: drama, art, music, sport, debating, oracy, I think, as Bridget Phillipson has talked about it. These are the things that really build children's confidence and sense of self, and a sense that they can be good at something that isn't just, reading, writing. Very, very important. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a focus on making sure that all children do graduate from school with, those skills that are essential for whatever job they might go into. But the thing that can create a sense of self and achievement are often not your reading and your writing and your maths. It is whether you're good at sport or whether you're fantastic at a particular instrument. And, the degradation, I think, of those aspects of our state school education are the things that I think do force people sometimes to go, I'm going to send my kid private. Well, we shouldn't have to force people to make that option. And of course, there are, many, many people who will never have the choice to make that option because they simply can't afford it. And I really believe in that ideal that state school should essentially, make private schools redundant, because they provide everything that you need. And the very best state schools really do that already.
Fantastic. You know what? That's the same for the NHS as well, isn't it? We shouldn't have to have a system where people feel like they are forced to go private in certain areas of the country because the NHS, in their opinion, isn't good enough. It should be that it is the world-class standard, as it was under the last Labour government, and the same for schools. I mean, I saw as a teacher, and I've left teaching now, but I remember seeing the curriculum become narrower and narrower. And even though I was a history teacher and that was one of the main subjects, I thought, yeah, but to be human isn't just history, learning to read, write, maths. I mean, obviously it's essential skills, but the private schools, like you said, have all the additional extracurricular which develop the human to flourish. And that's what we believe in as teachers. So why do the Tories take it away from our children and yet they're willing to have it in their own private schools? It just seems complete double standards.
Absolutely. When I speak to teachers locally, this is what they say. They feel that the curriculum has put themselves and their children on a conveyor belt, and there is no scope for the creativity that teachers bring, but children bring as well.
Yeah.
And of course, we've got lots of children who just don't fit into that particular mould. They need an education that's shaped around them, rather than them fitting into a shape that's being prescribed by, with bureaucrats in central government. So I think that particular aspect of the opportunity mission is potentially really, really exciting and could genuinely transform our schools, but further on, hopefully our social mobility as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just on that point, I just want to just make a point, which I don't know if you agree with this, I'm sure you would, but it just seems that the last 13, 14 years has also been the government at war with professionals in these different industries. I mean, as a teacher, I felt like it was the government was really going to take on and go over at first the teaching profession. Jeremy Hunt really felt the same with junior doctors and fighting junior doctors. And it just seems like there's been this endless battle rather than actually working. I love what you said about the cross-department element of government, but also it goes into the outside of society and the inside of society and how it works, working with teachers, working with education profession, working with NHS. It just seems like we've gone so backward in the last 13 years on that stuff.
Well, I think it's because the Conservatives always seem to have to define themselves against a group of people. And it just seems that they're choosing more and more people, and therefore their circle of trust gets ever smaller. We've heard that, teachers are woke, doctors are woke, lawyers are woke.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially everybody who isn't part of their very narrow set of thinking is somehow, you know, I don't know, the establishment. I mean, that's apparently become something that they rail against, even though they are it. I've never quite understood that bit. But you know, clearly, Labour will have a different approach. We are the party that created the NHS. We are the party that pushed for comprehensive education. We're the party that has always, when we're in government, rebuilt public services. And we will do that again. And of course, you've got to trust people. Nobody can do a fantastic job without a sense of trust, autonomy, and that they are in control of what they do. That's not to say we shouldn't have high standards. And I think everybody in Labour would say, you know, we do not want, you know, poor standards, particularly for those who are the least disadvantaged. I think it was, you know, Richard Titmuss who said, you know, we don't want services for the poor because they become poor services. Universal services is what we want, and we want them to be of the very highest quality. But yes, I think there will be a difference in approach, both to public servants, but also to civil servants, because, you know, they shouldn't be masters under sort of a political elite who sort of direct every single bit of the public sector to do exactly what they want. They should set the parameters, of course, and make sure that there's value for money and good high quality standards. But the rest of it surely has to come through human innovation. And for that, you do need to set people free.
Absolutely, could not agree more with that. That's fantastic. So in that case, then, Jess, I want you to imagine, you know, fingers crossed, when the election comes, Labour is able to form a majority government. Come on, that would be amazing.
Come on.
The country needs it desperately. In that case, I want you to imagine that you have been elected to represent Lowestoft in Parliament, and Prime Minister Starmer says to you he wants you to serve in his cabinet. Now, this is obviously not saying it's definitely going to happen. You can't assume it doesn't happen. But if it does happen,
I
what
think
sort of department would you go for?
you kind of, well, first of all, you know, when you get elected, your first responsibility is to your constituents. So Prime Minister Starmer would be being, frankly, not true to what most newly elected MPs need to do, which is to create that bond and prove that the choice that their constituents have just made is the right choice. So I would say, I'm sorry, Mr. Starmer, but I've got a job to do, and that is to represent and change my community locally. However, if there was a second term of a Labour government,
I like
and I
that.
proved
Yes, we want a
myself,
second term for sure. Yeah.
well, you know, you can't make the change that you want to see for the UK
Yeah.
without a serious long-term plan. And you know, in an ideal world, if I were to ever be given that opportunity, it would be education. And I currently work in my day job because being a parliamentary candidate is not paid. Just to everyone out there who thinks that it is, it's a voluntary role with a lot of responsibility. But in my day job, I work for a children's charity, and I adore it. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to stand for Parliament, because there is so much that we need to do for children. We talked earlier about that sense that the generations aren't getting better off than the previous ones. And there is just simply so much to fix. The Department for Education, you know, isn't just about schools, but often that's what I think a lot of politicians and people think it is also hugely important in terms of children's social care, predominantly obviously delivered by local authorities. But we have had such deep cuts to children's social care, an increase in children going into care because we got rid of things like Sure Start, we got rid of, you know, those early interventions that would work with families. and support them so that children didn't need to be taken away from their family. Now, of course, in some circumstances that has to happen. But then what are we doing with children who are in care? You know, we should be giving them the very, very best opportunities, and yet they still get some of the worst outcomes. That is an utter failure of the state to act as a serious parent to those children. And for me, that would just be an absolute honour to have the opportunity to really, really think about how do we transform children's lives across a whole range of areas, but particularly children's social care, as well as, of course, schools.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. And you know what? You just think the change in this country, if we properly release the potential of every child, that is massive, absolutely massive. And it would change not only the chances of this country in the terms of the economic standing, but the happiness of so many people as well. So that's fantastic answer. Right, I've just got to ask you then a bit of a fun question, and I'm going to be honest here, Jess. I might judge your music taste because I'm going to ask you a music-based question. Alex Strathern had a band I'd never even heard of before. We're the same age, so actually I might be aware of the music you're into. I don't know. He's obviously a bit cooler and younger than us. So I'm going to ask you a quick question then. If you were ever a minister in the future, a Labour minister, and you were asked onto Desert Island Discs, what one song would you take with you and why?
Well, I mean, I'm afraid this isn't a contemporary musical choice, and it's very much influenced by my mother. But also, I played it as the music that I walked out to with my new husband, and we got married in Norwich. So it would be Bill Withers, just the two of us.
Oh, nice.
Because it would remind me of my mother. And Bill Withers is just fantastic. I mean, there's no Bill Withers song that frankly isn't beautiful.
Yeah.
But it would also remind me of my husband and that beautiful moment when we got married. So, yeah.
See, you're so clever because what you've done there is you made it that I cannot take the mick out of your song because it's like, what sort of heartless man would I be to say anything against that?
No, you can't.
Oh, I'm so with you there, Jess, but I'm afraid, Ali, your choice was still a bit out. Anyway, no, fantastic. So in that case, how can people get involved in your campaign, Jess? This is for people in East Anglia, but if you want to travel out from London and Birmingham and places, and you're in that part of the world, it'd be great to have you on board, wouldn't it? So what's the best place to get in touch, to get involved? How can our members help you get elected?
Oh, so many ways. So let me go through. Look, fundamentally, I recognise that lots of people are really busy. So the first key, very easy way to get involved is to donate. We, absolutely are, crowd sourcing the funding for our campaign. Unlike what we're seeing from the Conservatives, who can, sell off these, I don't know, what was it? Tennis with Boris, and they do that stuff, don't they? Right? And it goes
cringy,
for,
isn't it? A bit cringy.
Squillions of pounds, and you just kind of think, oh my goodness. Well, we don't let that kind of money dominate. We very, very much rely on individuals who support what we're trying to achieve in Lowestoft to donate. So the sort of lowest bar, I guess, would be for people to donate whatever they can afford, because every single penny of that will go into our leaflets and our direct mail. And there's digital campaign now. So, that is an important way now of getting through to people, given that actually a lot of people don't necessarily read the local papers. Things are changing. So digital is quite important. That's the first thing. Second, phone banking. You can do that from wherever you are in the country, even if you're in Scotland, although there are very good Scottish candidates. Anybody can join sort of Labour's phone banking operation. There is a brilliant tool that you can use if you log on to Labour Hub, which all members have access to. You can only do it if you're a member, so join the party first, I guess I probably should say, for anyone who isn't a member. Then you can put in the area that you want to call, Lowestoft, and it brings up numbers that you can call directly from the comfort of your own home. Third, we are out canvassing 4 times on a weekend, midweek as well. So if you are somebody who enjoys speaking to people, understanding their issues, talking to them about why they need to support me for a Labour government, then joining us on the doorstep. Also, it's Lowestoft. Beautiful sandy beaches, gorgeous Broads, lots to do, fabulous fish and chips. Make it a
Maybe an
little
ice cream.
weekend away. Oh, lots of ice cream, yeah. So make it a little weekend away. If you have kids, lots of brilliant things to do. We have a zoo, a fabulous zoo called Africa Alive. So, you can come out and your partner can take kids to the zoo. We, have fantastic soft plays and also brilliant bowling alley. So, yeah, loads of things for the kids to do while you go do a bit of knocking on doors, and then you can have a very nice evening meal in a lovely hotel.
Can I just
So
say
that's
quickly, you can tell
another
you're a
way.
parent, right? Because when I was in Peterborough, we went up for a national campaign day to help Andrew there, and we then went to a trampoline park, and you're very much planning the family activities around it because it is, yeah. I mean, families, it's tricky, so that's great. Well done. Any family people out there, no excuses. You're gonna have a fantastic day out as well.
Yeah, and when the spring season opens, and I think it might have done already actually, Pleasurewood Hills,
Oh, remember
amazing
that?
theme
Yeah,
park, amazing theme
that
park.
brings back
I
lots
remember
of
going there
memories of
when I
my
was
childhood.
13,
Yeah.
and I went back there last summer, and
I
oh my
bet the
goodness,
rides are
it's
quite
still fab.
small compared to what you remember, right? Because I remember it
Oh
being
my
so
goodness.
high in the air. I
Oh
was like,
no. Oh no, I clearly, had, guts of steel then. Now as my kids say, I think this one's too scary for mummy. You can stay down there. Yeah. Let's not talk about when I went on the roller coaster at Great Yarmouth Pleasure Beach because, well, there are photos.
second
So,
episode being set up already. I think we need to find out more. But anyway, okay.
oh yeah, politicians on roller coasters. I'll be honest, Dan. Can we not do that?
Yeah, okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay.
But yes, so there's lovely things to do to come and doorstep, and that in the end is the very best way that you can help to connect with our local residents. But for people who live locally, we also have other things. So we now have a beautiful campaign office that was opened on the weekend by Charles Clark, former Home Secretary, and of course, I think our last Secretary of State from East Anglia for the Labour Party. I've been trying to work that one out, but I think that's the case. And so we need people who can help to answer phones, who can, do tea and coffee, bake cakes, keep the shop open for people to come in and out, grab leaflets and so forth. So there's quite a lot of things that people can do. They really, really don't want to do the doorstep or they don't want to do phone canvassing. There's always things that we need, and of course leafleting too. So we try and deliver all of our leaflets through volunteer power. And if that is your cup of tea, then I think I mentioned we have some very beautiful villages. So do come get your steps in.
Great. And you know what? That's the thing. We are a party of lots of different talents and individual skills. And so I guarantee to listeners now, you have something you can give to this campaign. Whether that's from afar, whether it's locally, you can make a difference. In fact, my experience of the Labour Party is that we have the big membership that does make the difference. Some parties throw money at things, some of them throw PR at things, whatever. But we're the party that has the membership, and there's a member. In whatever way you can make a difference, it will make such a difference because you are spreading that message out there of hope, which is what we need right now. And that's why we need to get people like Jess elected in Lowestoft so we can have that Labour government we're all fighting for. So let's say, Jess, this has been really a great pleasure for me to talk to you. I've known you kind of over the years as we've kind of, seen austerity and some of the changes that have happened and how our communities have been affected. And I just really wish you all the best of luck for the up-and-coming election, and that one day you'll come back onto the show with those 2 letters after your name, MP.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Before before I go, may I ask a massive favour? Like this podcast and smash that subscribe button. Leave a review. Share this podcast with other Labour Party members, your CLPA executive, and anyone who, like us, wants to fight for the next Labour government our country so desperately needs. If you're a candidate and wish to come onto the show, then email me at labourpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, bye for now.